While French riot police were breaking up a picket line at an oil refinery Tuesday morning near Marseille, over in the capital, a very different kind of police raid. Dateline Paris's Rue de Londres, or London Street if you will, headquarters of Google in France. Over 100 tax inspectors making a beeline for the hard drives. They want up to 1.6 billion euros in back taxes, and to prove that no, Google France is not just a quiet backwater subsidiary of the US tech giant's EU headquarters in Ireland. Ireland, where a corporate tax rate is at a mere 12.5%, all above board, as Google insists, or a shocking case of the kind of tax avoidance uncovered in the LuxLeaks scandal? We're going to be asking our panel. Since it broke in 2014, that scandal, rules have already started to change, but have those changes gone far enough? Google's £130 million settlement with the UK's Inland Revenue, hailed as a victory back in January. Now those numbers look small to many. The question thus begs, who's David, who's Goliath in this showdown that could set a precedent over how we do business in this globalized world of ours? Today in the France-24 debate, Google searched. And with us, he's a former Google consultant, Jérôme de Rosard. Thank you for being with us. We want to thank as well Cody Olson, who advises clients on data protection and privacy at CIL Consulting.
That's right.
And we welcome back a man who teaches information warfare at the French Political Science Institute, Sciences Po, Fabrice Epelboin, co-founder of Yogosha IT Security. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yogosha. Okay. Google France, by the way, declined our invitation to join us on set, instead pointing us towards the communique that they put out on Tuesday. It's a case that you've been reacting on the France-24 debate Facebook page and Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. The case mirroring a similar probe, by the way, underway in Italy and one that was settled in Britain. Elliot Richardson has more.
An early morning wake-up call for Google. 100 tax officials marched inside the American internet giant's offices in central Paris at 5 a.m. Google is under investigation for tax evasion, with reports claiming it owes the French state 1.6 billion euros in unpaid taxes, but the firm denies any wrongdoing. In a statement, Google said, "We respect French law and are cooperating fully with authorities to answer their questions." The Californian-based company is accused of funneling profits to the Republic of Ireland, the home of their regional headquarters. The corporate tax rates are lower in Ireland than elsewhere in Europe. In January, Google paid the UK £130 million in back taxes from 2005, a move criticised as disproportionately small by the UK Public Accounts Committee. UK Chancellor George Osborne defended Google's payment. European authorities are examining whether such deals are illegal. In April, the EU announced plans for big firms to disclose how much tax they pay in each member state. It's not just Google that's been in hot water with authorities. Apple agreed to pay the Italian government 318 million euros last year over allegations that it dodged tax for 6 years.
Fabrice Epelbois, this story, the first to break it was Paris newspaper Le Parisien, and some of the tax authorities people are quoted in the story as saying that they didn't communicate by email before the raid. Quote, "You never know, what if Google was monitoring them Big Brother style?" So they were afraid of being spied on at the finance ministry?
They are spied on, not by Google, of course. Google has nothing to do with spying. They have no way to spy anybody in France, except people using their product. But basically...
When you say using their product, does that include Gmail, for instance?
Yeah, of course. But the fiscal administration is not using Gmail. The guys who are spying on the fiscal administration are called the NSA, and the NSA is working with Google. And the NSA's basic motto is not fighting against terrorism. It's fighting for America and for the American company. Last year, the NSA, using German Secret Service, was spying Airbus, one of the biggest French company, and were basically stealing industrial secrets in order to give them back to American companies. This is specifically what the NSA is the best at doing, spying to protect America's interest, and Google is in America's interest.
Cody Olson, you agree that if you're about to do tax raid on a major U.S. corporation, you better off using a manual typewriter?
It's a very good question. Given the type of powers that the French fiscal authorities had, they did not need to notify Google before they came onto the premise and raided Google. So the fact that there was no exchange of information towards Google beforehand, this is a power that was created in 2009 in France, and they effectively used it in this type of scenario. So yes, the manual typewriter would have been nice, but I don't think it posed a problem in this type of situation.
All right, I suppose you don't have a fly on the wall that was inside the room, but do you think that they were caught off guard, that they were surprised?
I do believe so. It is within a company's rights to know when there's a procedure, when there's type of...
And that procedure had been ongoing.
Right. The French president stated a few months ago that he was going to introduce a type of procedure, a fiscal investigation into Google. So we can say that they were forewarned. However, they were not forewarned about this specific day, this specific time, and that is within the French tax authorities' rights to introduce a type of investigation.
All right, and a lot of questions we're asking ourselves. Again, the essential one, how can a company that generated officially 225.4 million euros in France in revenues in 2014 pay just 5 million euros in taxes? Those numbers, according to Google, the boss of French telecoms giant Orange claimed back in February that Google makes €1 billion a year in France. Again, because this can be confusing for viewers, right? Because we're talking about several things. Here we're talking about revenues. We're not talking about profits. Does that number, first of all, of 225 million euros of revenues in France seem right to you?
No. If this type of revenue is produced by a multi-million-dollar company such as Google, this should give us some sort of proof that they do have a permanent establishment within France. Ergo, they should be paying taxes on the revenue that they create.
Jérôme de Rosat, let me ask you about your experience working with Google. How big an operation is it?
It's a giant operation. Last week they had this big show in California named Google I/O, and they managed to bring in like 7,000 developers from around the world, and they had like maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people of their own. And just in France, they have like maybe a few hundred developers working there. And I'm not sure most of the people there are aware of what's going on in the other division of Google. So it's not especially the right place where you should come look for information on ads and this type of operations that are managed not from France, but from Ireland or from other countries.
And what was your reaction when the news broke that there was this raid on their French headquarters?
It looked very dramatic, like a bit of scare tactic, to say, okay, I'm the French state, I can investigate anybody I want, wherever I want. And I read they brought like 25 IT experts to investigate the computers, but maybe they don't know that Google is based on working on the cloud, so they don't have a lot of files, I suspect, on their hard disk. Most of the things are stored in Ireland on other servers. There are no servers in France, so nobody can come and investigate the hard disk of Google France.
So they're going to be disappointed, Fabrice Epelmois, with what they find?
I think this is show business, basically. There aren't any multinational corporation working in France paying some decent taxes in France. That's the rule in Europe as a whole. You don't pay taxes in Europe when you're a major multinational corporation. You only pay taxes when you are an ordinary citizen or a medium-sized corporation. But once you grow big, once you can be on several countries at the same time, you don't pay taxes. You don't obey the law. I mean, we have European corporations using child slavery abroad, and it's legal. So why would they pay any tax if using slavery is legal for them? You can really easily avoid taxes when you're that big in Europe. It's very easy. All of them are doing that. Google, like every other major corporation. So pointing the finger at Google is a nice way of putting up a show. And saying that the French government is doing something against those tax evasion that the people are angry about. But basically it's just a show.
Do you agree? This is just theater, what we witnessed on Tuesday?
No, I don't share the same opinion. I believe that the UK settlement was the door that opened on Pandora's box. It really opened up the possibility for other countries to follow through. We have seen this type of procedures in other fields, such as data protection. In 2014, Google was sanctioned by Spain for not respecting privacy rules, followed up by France 2 months later, followed up by the Netherlands 2 months later. So we do see this type of piggybacking on the evidence that has been proven in other countries to prove an essential violation of tax laws, of data protection laws. So I do feel that this is opening up Pandora's box.
All right, let's talk about it because it came up in the House of Commons today, where they were talking about back in January Britain's inland revenue settling with Google to the tune of £130 million. Let's wind back the clock and hear the British government's reaction at the time.
This is a real vindication of this government's approach. When I became Chancellor, there were some companies that paid little or no tax, and that rightly caused a lot of public anger. We said we'd take action. Now we have companies like Google paying tax. And I want the message to go out that in Britain taxes are low, but they have to be paid, and I expect more companies to follow suit.
But of course, the opposition Labour Party has been seeing no reason to celebrate. Back at the time, this was what the shadow chancellor, John McDonnell, said, £130 million, significantly lower than a fair or reasonable assessment of Google's UK turnover and profits would suggest, with experts suggesting Google has been levied an effective tax rate of around 3%. That was what he found. And thus, we have on the hashtag F24 debate some saying France seems to be tackling tax avoidance. I've seen no action from the UK yet, considering that it's no action, a £130 million settlement compared to the 1.6 billion the French are asking. Is it fair to say that it's no action?
No. Any action is action. Whether that be 700,000 euros or whether that be 150 billion euros, it doesn't really matter. Action is action. It opens up the possibility for other countries to follow through. And we've seen
other companies such as Facebook announcing that they're going to be declaring more of their revenues in the country where they make their money.
Right. That is definitely a choice that the company makes. They decide whether or not they want to be proactive about the problem and say, hey, okay, there was a problem before, but now we're going to change. It is a competitive advantage, and that's what they're doing.
All right. Jérôme Desrosiers was mentioning how the tax authority regulators don't quite understand there's this thing called the cloud. Do you think that tax regulators, though, are copping on slowly, but they are copping on? And thus we're starting to hear this discussion about taxing at the source.
Honestly, I think the technical part of the problem is, yes, very laughable when you understand what are cloud technology, and though all this is quite ridiculous considering the technologies Google are using. They're acting just as if Google was writing on some piece of paper every financial information. Of course, it's not happening like that, and of course, it's not stored in France. It would be totally stupid to store this in France, considering all the surveillance in this country. Google would evade countries like France to protect really sensitive information, and everybody's doing that. Just the same way no European company is putting sensitive information in the United States. It's too dangerous. There's too much surveillance in those countries. So of course Google knows about this and would never store any sensitive information in France. That's obvious, totally obvious. When it comes to Google, what was your question about? Excuse me?
Well, the question was, are the tax authorities now, all right, they're slow, but they're starting to catch up a little bit?
They're basically fighting fiscal regulation who are not adapt to the 21st century. That's the main problem. It's not a technical problem. It's really a legal problem. The legal framework for fiscal anything in Europe is totally obsolete, and everybody's playing with it.
The LuxLeaks scandal, 343 corporations which made secret deals with Luxembourg, Has that changed things?
No, there was an investigation launched within the European Commission. It has been stopped. It hasn't changed anything. LuxLeaks, Panama Paper, Cayman Leaks, it hasn't changed anything. The only major change is that the public is totally aware that the political system is not coping with the problem.
Cody Olsen, nothing has changed?
No, I feel that's too simplistic to say. I feel that the public is becoming more aware. Beforehand, we didn't have this general consensus to go through and really find out who's responsible to push these procedures through in these investigations through the official channels. Now, the fact that people are becoming more aware about these leaks, and that after the revelations of the Panama Leaks and LuxLeaks, I feel the public consensus, the public awareness is really pushing through.
Excuse me, just one word. In the Panama Papers, there were proof and evidence that our former president in France was clearly involved with his business partner, his longtime business partner, and that several deputies were involved. Nothing has been done about that. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
So, Jérôme de Rosard, when the French taxman takes on Google, who's David and who's Goliath?
In France, at least, the state is the Goliath. Google is quite small, and the state has more means, more inspectors. I guess all of BSC have more people who can look into the accounts of Google friends than Google has in front of them to try to find some loopholes in which they can...
So despite that cloud, the state will come up with something?
In France, but the problem is that the tax authorities only take care of France, and they don't really coordinate with other tax authorities in Europe and so on to try to find out if they can find some common grounds to tax the company. For example, I'm not sure they talk even to the Irish, the people in Ireland, about how they can work together to determine if Google is selling ads from France or from Ireland. That's the key question.
Can they determine that, Fabrice Epelboin, where the ads are being sold from?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess they can do that. Yeah, they probably can do that.
And how closely, if you were a betting man, would you say that the French and Irish tax authorities are working?
Oh, I would bet 100%. It's...
Bet 100% what? That they are
they're
cooperating?
Working together, that they're working
the French
together.
and the Irish are working
yes,
together.
One of the tools that all tax authorities have and European authorities have is the exchange of information. They can cooperate together and help produce a unified approach to a certain company. We've seen this against Google. In the specific case of data protection, we saw different authorities communicating at the European level to have a unified approach and to say, yes, we're going to sanction at this moment, we're going to sanction after, and we're going to sanction after. So I think it would be naive in the surveillance state that we live in to say that the authorities are not working together. I believe that they are.
All right, so it's more a case of the regulators against the corporations. We'll be talking about it when we come back in the France 24 debate.